Alright, hi everyone, it's Hassan, and this video is going to go over how to mix vocals professionally in PreSonus Studio One 3. This doesn't primarily pertain to just this digital audio workstation. Of course, it can be used in any digital audio workstation that you use, Cubase, Pro Tools, etc. Now, how to mix vocals professionally. By professionally, what I refer to is getting them to sit within a mix without standing out too much and not being drowned out by the production on the other end. So getting that fine line between where the vocals are audible, yet they don't seem like a completely different layer. So now, of course, there's no general rule of how vocals should be mixed. It entirely depends on the song that you're working on. It entirely depends on the genre of that song, the feeling or the mood that you're going for. So for this video, I'm going to go over Silhouettes. Silhouettes is a track that I released recently. It's an R&B, neo R&B and soul track with a little pop influence or a little dance influence. So these vocals were influenced heavily by Carlo Montanisi, who is actually popularly known as Il Angelo, and how he works on the Weeknd's tracks and that sound that propelled Weeknd into the star that he is today. So if you haven't heard Silhouettes yet, I suggest going to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, or whichever service you use, and taking a listen to the song before moving ahead with this video. So really quickly before I get into it, it's important to know what tone you want on the vocals before you even get into post-production. Never mind post-production, before you even actually record the vocals, you should know what type of tone you want to and what type of character you want to give the vocals that you're working on. So, and a lot of the post-production can actually be mitigated by making sure that everything that starts from the source, which is the vocalist, is coloring the vocals in the correct way before they even get to your mixing console or your computer. And that can be utilized by having a tube microphone or a tube preamplifier, etc., which colors it in different ways. So let's take a quick listen, and then I'll systematically go through exactly how I mixed each of the layers for the main vocals and the chorus, and exactly which plugins I used.
Lately you've been getting so hard to see. It seems like you've been inching away from me. We speak about nothing, at times you say you're mine, but your eyes say otherwise. Oh, you talk about me like I'm your enemy. It seems like you stopped trying to make it right. You think I don't know. You say you're fine, but your words say otherwise. Oh, I'm picturing our love. All I seem to see is silhouettes. There's no color in my life. Girl, you left me black and white. You took away the moments I knew best. Have you seen my baby? 'Cause it ain't the same. All I seem to see is silhouettes. Have you seen my baby? 'Cause it ain't the same. Girl, you left me black and white. You took away the moments.
Alright, so let's take a look at this part of the song right here, and I'll show you a before and after of the vocals. So right when the vocals were recorded, how this sounded without any effects or plugins on it, and exactly which plugins I added to bring that pop profile to the vocals. So this is the part we'll be listening to.
Lately you've been getting so hard to see. It seems like you've been inching away from me. We speak about nothing. At times you say you're mine, but your eyes say otherwise.
Alright, so what I did was I just quickly renamed the 4 tracks we'll be looking at right here. And you can tell they're right here, the background vocals. BG2, BG3, and the main vocals is the ones we're going to be looking at. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off all the plugins and show you the before, and slowly work my way through the plugins to show you exactly how the sound develops with each of the plugins that I put in. Alright, so let's just take off all of these plugins. And the reverb and the chorus and the parallel compression as well. And I'll tell you exactly what that is once we get to it.
Lately you've been getting so hard to see. It seems like you've been inching away from me. We speak about nothing. At times you say you're mine, but your eyes say otherwise.
So that's completely dry. There's no effects on it whatsoever. So what you see here is, now this used to be a two or three different takes. So from one take I liked just this portion right here.
Lately you've been getting so
lately you've been getting so hard to see. And then from another take I like the second portion of the verse, and this one I like the third portion, and then the fourth portion, and so on. So that's how it was edited. And in terms of the dynamics, I'm pretty consistent with how the vocals are recorded. So taking each part of a take, or taking a different part of a take, isn't necessarily problematic for me, and I've seen that with a lot of the vocalists that come in to record, that if they have consistent dynamics within their vocal takes, it's easier to pick and choose the best parts of each take. So the first thing I do after we've composed the take with the best segments is pitch correction. That's the first thing that I do. And pitch correction, my go-to pitch correction plugin, is Auto-Tune, as I feel most engineers that I work with use Auto-Tune, or Melodyne is also a great one as well. For this one, I use their Auto-Tune Live plugin and their pitch correction control. You can use the normal Auto-Tune, which has the graph control, which gives you a little more flexibility in terms of correcting every single note. However, for this one, I felt that it wasn't necessary to go that much in depth in pitch correction. Working around Auto-Tune, it's pretty straightforward. You select the key and the scale of the song or the vocals that the recording is in, and then you select exactly how fast you want the retune speed to be, so how fast the program reacts to the vocal or to the waveform. Right, so you can do completely Auto-Tune, which
seems like you've been inching away from me,
which would sound very T-Painish, or you can keep it really slow, which makes it sound more natural.
It seems like you've been inching away from me.
Right. So the next plugin that I throw on is the Vocal Rider plugin. The Vocal Rider plugin is a great little tool that Waves has produced, and what it does, it helps engineers to automate the volume of the vocal while it's playing. So whereas engineers before would use the knobs and the faders to automate the volume to bring out the low parts of the vocals higher to match, to give it that smooth consistency, and the higher parts lower to make it seem like it wasn't too loud at specific parts of the take. So for the plugin itself, there's several settings that you can play around with to get the best fit for your vocals. However, I wanted something a little slower in terms of reaction time, so it doesn't seem too abrupt in the changes, and it reacts smoothly. So you'll see exactly how the knob works while the vocal plays.
It seems like you've been inching away from me. We speak about nothing. At times you say you're mine, but your eyes say otherwise. It seems like you've been inching away from me. We spin away from me.
So it's a very small difference that a lot of people probably won't be able to pick up on. However, you can tell that, you know, during the last portion right here,
From me.
it bumps up the volume of that. So right after the vocal rider plays this part, the next thing I do is throw on an EQ. So the EQ I put on right after the vocal rider to take out the frequencies that I don't want. Any of the frequencies that I feel are intruding or, you know, clashing with any of the other instruments. That's pretty much where I throw on a low cut filter and take out pretty much everything under 100 hertz, as it's not really necessary to have that, and it just muddies up the song with those frequencies in the vocals. Now for this one, it's right about 130 and low cut. I also put down around the 200 hertz and then bumped it up around the 500 and then around the 4K, and then did a little dip out right around the 16 kilohertz. So before the EQ, it sounded
It seems like you've
very
been
natural,
inching away from me.
and then right after the EQ puts on,
It seems like you've been inching away from me.
see that that bassiness in the vocals went away, and the 4 kilohertz right here really brought up that sheen in the vocals, and brought them a little more to the forefront of the track.
It seems like you've been inching away from me. It seems like you've been inching away from me.
So now once I feel like I've gotten the vocals to sit well within their frequency range, no, so before I move on, one thing I want to specify is when you're mixing, not just vocals, when you're mixing any other instrument for that matter, within a song, every instrument has a specific frequency that it shines in. So be sure when you're mixing vocals or when you're mixing any other instrument to ensure that it doesn't clash with other instruments and it has its own frequency range that it sits well within. And I'll explain what I mean by that right now. So if you take a look at the instrumental, I've EQ'd the instrumental a little bit in terms of how I wanted it to sound with the vocals that I recorded after, without having to go all the way back into the session file and, you know, mess around with the instruments, and take out a little bit around the 5 kilohertz, where I felt like the vocals needed to shine a little bit more, and that would help the vocals sit really well as I carve out that frequency range in the instrumental to let the vocals sit on top of that. This obviously takes a little bit of time and an experience, sorry, to get a hang of exactly what frequencies resonate with what type of mood you're trying to go for. So what I'll do is I'll actually put a link in the description box where you can go check out a reference guide for EQing different instruments, for EQing vocals, and it'll guide you exactly what frequency ranges bring out what type of character in those specific instruments. It's a handy little tool. It's helped me a lot during, larger mix sessions where I felt like I needed a reference to just go and quickly pick out which frequency range I need to be working with to get that specific character if I don't know it right off the top of my head. So now, moving on, after we've finished EQing the vocals, the next thing that I do is I compress. Now, I've taken out all the frequencies that I don't like. I've accentuated the frequencies that I do want more prominent in the vocals. So the next thing that I do is I throw in a compressor. And for this specific song, the compressor that I used was the built-in compressor that PreSonus has in their plugin selection. Now, I have a variety of different plugins. I have emulations of the LA2A compressor. I've have Waves Renaissance compressor. I have so many, but generally the main thing to understand is to utilize the compressor, the settings, and know how to work around them, and to work with them, before getting into the whole concept of different types of compressors, different types of EQs. Once you utilize the settings properly, you'll benefit more from moving on to different compressors afterwards, specific song. So without the compressor, you'll see that there's still some sort of differences in the vocals, and then you'll get to see the difference after I put in the compressor as well.
It seems like you've been inching away from me. It seems like you've been inching away from me.
So what the compressor did was it squashed the vocals down, and that's the type of sound that I wanted to go for. I didn't want too many dynamics. So what you saw the compressor did was it squashed the vocals down, so it made them a lot more a lot more consistent in terms of where the highs were and where the lows were. And you probably noticed that in a lot of commercial pop songs nowadays that the vocals are less dynamic than they used to be before. So there's a variety of different settings, and I can get really into the different settings of each of the compressor and how they work and how they contribute to the overall effect that the compressor does, but that'll take a little while. So I do suggest reading up on compressors, and googling exactly what the ratio, what the threshold, what the knee is, and then the attack and release. So as a general rule of thumb, what most engineers do is they have a ratio of 4-1 with a generally fast attack, and a slow release. My settings are a little more aggressive. They're more in lines of what Dr. Dre did for 50 Cent during his Get Rich or Die Trying album. A lot of vocals nowadays, you've noticed, are over compressed, as some might say. But however, that is the sound nowadays, to get everything as loud as possible without affecting the dynamics. So as for the compressor settings, what a compressor does is pretty much takes the quiet parts, makes them louder, and takes the louder parts and makes them quieter. So right after the compressor, what I do is I throw on a de-esser, and what the de-esser does is any harsh sibilance that comes from pronunciation of anything that has the letter S in it, it takes that out. So you'll get to see exactly how that works right here. Let me play without the de-esser and then with it.
It seems like you've been inching away from me. It seems like you've been inching away from me. It seems like you.
So you can notice that the seams right there is even highlighted on the FabFilter Pro DS. It shows you exactly which part of the vocals the harsh sibilance was the de-esser acted on to bring down that really harsh sound. So right after the de-esser, I put on a multi-band compressor. So the multi-band compressor, what it does is it allows you to control, and you have flexibility on being able to compress specific frequency ranges. So as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different frequency ranges that I can mess around with. I can raise the EQs. I can compress a little more during this frequency range. I can turn down the compressor during this frequency range. And you can see all the controls right here. Now, the multi-band compressor takes a little playing around with to get used to. And playing around with multi-band compressors really helps you train your ears as well, because you see how compression and EQs are affected differently, and how those characters within those frequency ranges are affected by over compressing sometimes, or over EQing, and it'll help you train your ear to become more accustomed and more sensitive to those different frequency ranges and their characters, and their accompanying characters. So after gone through all those trial and error of seeing which frequency range I want to compress, increase a little, this is what it turned out to sound like. So this is without it.
It seems like you've been inching away from me.
And then this is with
We, it seems like you've been inching away from me.
Very subtle difference, but you could tell the difference between the vocals right before the multiband compressor was put in and right afterwards as well. And once I go through the plugins and I get the vocals, generally sounding as fat as I want it to sound without being overly powerful to the rest of the beat. So this is what it sounds like after all the plugins have been put in.
It seems like you've been inching away from me.
So as you can tell, it's very cohesive with the production, but there's still something missing. There's still an ambiance missing, which is pretty much the reverb. So the next thing is, to send it out to a reverb channel and put in a reverb. Now this reverb could be anything. For this specific song, what I wanted to give it that spacious vocal sound where it doesn't sound too boxed in, and it gives that huge ambiance. So for the vocal tracks and any other vocal tracks for that matter, what I do is I throw a send track for the reverb. And what a send track does is pretty much mirrors that track without affecting the original track, without affecting the original waveform, sorry, and it alters the copy of that waveform that you put the send track on. So PreSonus has a templated reverb option that you can use and mess around with to get the right type of reverb that you want. For this specific song, this is the reverb that I used.
It seems like you've been inching away from me. We speak about nothing, at times you say.
So the good thing that PreSonus has is it has templated options for you to choose from if you don't know where to start from. So for the send track, for our main vocals, what I did was I went into PreSonus send and I chose vocal verb, which is pretty much a templated option for vocal reverb. And it automatically inputs all the four plugins for you. And that's pretty much all you have to do, and then you just start playing around with each of the plugins inside to get the sound that you want. After playing around with it, what I wanted was that big spacious sound, as I mentioned, and this is what I finalized on. So this is without the reverb.
It seems like you've been inching away from me.
And now this is with the reverb.
It seems like you've been inching away from me.
Very big, very spacious, very cathedral-like, and I really liked how that brought a different character to the whole song. Very serene and very soul-like. So let's listen to just the vocals without the reverb.
It seems like you've been inching away from me.
And with the reverb.
It seems like you've been inching away from me. We speak.
So right after the reverb, what I did was I threw on another send to put a half delay on the vocals.
It seems like you've been inching away from me. We speak.
So same concept with the delay. You pretty much make a send track for the delay, and what I wanted to do was I wanted to edit the delay on it to make it wider. So when I created the send track for the delay, I put the delay plugin in. H delay is a great delay plugin from Waves. I recommend using this. I use this almost on every track. So again, what I wanted to do with the delay I wanted to make the delay very spacious, even more wider than the actual vocals were, to make it stand to the sides of the audio image. What I did was I added a doubler, and the doubler, what that did was it created a chorus effect to the delays only and not the main vocal track. And as I mentioned, that whenever you do a send track, what it does, it duplicates the actual track, and then you can alter that actual. You don't alter the actual track, sorry, you alter the copy that's being copied to the send track. So what in this case, what it did was, when I put the doubler in, the doubler only affected the echoes and not the actual wave track. So if you take a listen to that, you'll see how the echoes are more wider in the stereo image with respect to the main track vocal being a little more dead center.
It seems like you've been inching away from me.
So once I got a good understanding and a good feel where I wanted those echoes to sit, the next and last thing that I did was put on a parallel compression onto the vocals to make the vocals stand out even a little bit more. So the last thing that I did to the vocals was I still felt that the vocals weren't prominent enough, and I wanted them to be pushed out a little more. So I used a little trick that was taught from another engineer a while back called parallel compression. So what parallel compression is just also known as New York compression. It's a dynamic range compression technique, and it's used in sound recording and mixing. What it does is it forms an upward compression. And it's you get that by mixing an unprocessed or a dry or lightly compressed signal with a heavily compressed version of the same signal. So what parallel compression was, it was often used on drums, and it's technically referred to as a New York drum kick when parallel compression is used on drums. But I've used it on vocals, and I felt like parallel compression itself helps thicken up vocals the same way that engineers have used it to thicken up drum sounds. I know it's a little hard to understand or grasp the idea of it, so I do suggest, again, going on Google and searching up parallel compression and reading a little more about it. I know Sound on Sound magazine has a rundown of what it is. I mean, you can even search it up on Wikipedia. There's so many different techniques, just parallel compression, which can be utilized in so many different ways, in so many different settings that even myself, I've used it recurringly, but I'm still learning something new every time I use it on a new project. So in a sense, what the parallel compression did was thicken up the vocal a little more by creating a copy of that vocal and compressing the shit out of that a copy. Let's hear how it sounded before and after that.
Inching away from me.
So this is without the parallel compression on.
It seems like you've been inching away from me.
And this is with it on.
It seems like you've been inching away from me.
Very, very subtle difference, and I'm not sure most of you will even hear it, but there is a very subtle difference that thickens up the vocal a little more. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to play it with you, and I'm going to increase the send level for the parallel compression so you see exactly what type of character that this parallel compression technique brings out.
It seems like you've been inching away from me. We speak about nothing, at times you say. It seems like you've been inching away from me. We speak.
So if you notice that during the take, when I increased it and decreased it, you probably noticed how the parallel compression brought that kind of fat, thickening sound to the vocals, and when I took it off, it became a little less, it became a little more thin sounding. So let's take a quick listen to the before and after of the main vocal. So this is how it sounded before.
It seems like you've been inching away from me. We speak about nothing, at times you say you're mine, but your eyes say otherwise. Oh.
And then after the post-production, this is how the main vocal sounds now.
It seems like you've been inching away from me. We speak about nothing, at times you say you're mine, but your eyes say otherwise. Oh.
So there it is. I know there's a lot of information that is probably hard to grasp, so I'm gonna do the best I can to answer any questions you guys have in the comments below, just like I did for the other video. And I feel like if I started going on and explaining every step of the process, every single setting for every single plugin, it would just too long of a video. But I mean, down the line, maybe I can create a course outline that helps go step by step to each single plugin. But that's something for the future. Now, that's how I generally mix vocals. There's a lot of steps to it, but again, it generally depends on the song you're editing and what type of character you want to give the vocals. So I hope you guys learned something. If you have any questions or concerns regarding the video, leave your comments and questions in the section below. I'll be sure to try my best to get back to everyone. And I hope you guys learned something, so be sure to subscribe. But that's all for now. Take care.
Lately you've been getting so hard to see. It seems like you've been inching away from me. We speak about nothing. At times you say you're mine, but your eyes say other.